Exposition of the Revelation of Jesus Christ by Walter Scott. Introduction. The principle on which our exposition proceeds is that the main contents of the Apocalypse are yet future, and that an exhaustive fulfillment of prophecy must be sought for in the near crisis of several years, culminating in the return of the Lord in power. We cannot have the accomplishment of prophecy so long as the Church is the platform of God's activity in grace. But when it is taken up to heaven, then God's suspended dealings with Israel and the nations are resumed. The Church, Christ's body and bride, is an election out of both, and is not itself a subject of prophecy, but of New Testament revelation. Matthew 16, verse 16 and 17, Ephesians 3. Events, political and religious, are transpiring before our eyes, which are the growth and result of centuries. But in the prophetic week of 7 years, Daniel 9, verse 27, changes of the most startling character are witnessed. The whole political government of Europe is then rearranged under Satan's prime minister, the beast of the Apocalypse, a gigantic confederation of 10 powers. The old Roman Empire will reappear under new conditions, guided and controlled by its active, blaspheming and persecuting head, the little horn of Daniel 7. His partner in crime and sharer in everlasting ruin is the Antichrist, who guides religiously in Christendom, as the beast does politically. The whore, or the mystical Babylon, is the concentration of everything religiously vile. Her political dethronement in the revived empire is effected instrumentally by the 10 kings, chapter 17, verse 16, who at first upheld her. Her ruin is mourned over by kings, merchants, and peoples outside the Roman earth, chapter 18, verses 9 to 19, and she is subsequently destroyed by God himself, verses 2 and 21 to 24, a short time before the destruction of the beast. This latter is effected by the Lord in person, and at his coming in power, chapter 19. The destruction of Babylon and the beast are separate events. The former precedes the latter. There can be no public development of these and other events of a like character so long as the Church is on earth. Evil at present is a mystery, though actively at work, but it is restrained or kept in check by 2 powers. What restraineth, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 6, is the Church on earth, and he who restraineth, verse 7, is the Holy Ghost. Hence, there cannot be the public abandonment of the faith till the Church and Spirit leave the earth. But the principles are at work which are surely and rapidly undermining the moral foundations of the professing Church and of society in general. The higher critics are the advance guard in the unholy crusade. The full-blown development may be expected ere long. Note to the 3rd edition. We are profoundly thankful to God for the many testimonies which have reached us of help and blessing, as also for the rapid sale of the 2nd issue of our exposition. We bespeak a warm welcome for the 3rd edition now in the hands of our readers. The futurist application is, we are convinced, the only consistent and scriptural one. History is an old almanac, is ever repeating itself. There is nothing new under the sun. The principles and motives which govern men in thought and action are ever the same, while, of course, the facts are new. But even these are framed on old types and models, Hence a general resemblance to the past may be traced in the prophecies. But the complete and exhaustive fulfillment of prophecy is undoubtedly future. The revelation is regarded by many as a mystery, as a sealed book. It is not so. It is open for the simple to understand. Explanation of its every symbol may be found by diligent search in some part or other of the sacred volume, whose verbal inspiration is the faith of the writer. Distribution of the contents of the Book of Revelation. Revelation, the veil rolled aside. The book was written and the visions seen by the beloved John in the island of Patmos about AD 96. 2 parts. The book is in 2 distinct and equal parts. 1. From chapter 1 to chapter 11 verse 18, in which the general condition of things and events is prophetically sketched from the close of the first Christian century till the introduction of the eternal state. Compare the time of the dead that they should be judged, chapter 11 verse 18, with I saw the dead, small and great, stand before the throne, chapter 20 verse 12. 2. From chapter 11 verse 19 to chapter 22 verse 21, in which details are furnished connected with Israel and Christendom in the future awful crisis of their history. 3 divisions. The threefold division of the prophecy is noted in chapter 1 verse 19. This verse is the key to the interpretation and understanding of the book. It contains a past, a present, and a future. 1. Write the things which thou hast seen. This constitutes a vision by itself, comprised within verses 10 to 18, in which Christ in the midst of the 7 golden lampstands is the central object. Past. 2. Write the things which are. These are embraced in chapters 2 and 3, in which the professing church is traced through contemporary and successive stages of her history, from her decline, chapter 2 verse 4, till her rejection, chapter 3 verse 16. Present. 3. Write the things which shall be hereafter, or after these things. This division commences with chapter 4 and runs on to chapter 22 verse 5. This is essentially the prophetic part of the book, future. The seals, trumpets and vials, Babylon, the marriage, the reign, etc. are each and all future. 12 sections. There are 12 sections into which the whole contents of the Apocalypse is distributed, and which, if carefully noted and mastered, will greatly facilitate the study of the book. 1. A general introduction, chapter 1, verses 1 to 9. 2. Christ in judicial glory in the midst of the 7 Asiatic churches, chapter 1, verses 10 to 18. 3. The Church in profession as God's witness on earth, her growing departure from love and truth, chapters 2 and 3. 4. The heavenly saints enthroned and glorified, including all embraced in 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 15 to 17, chapters 4 and 5. 5. The 7 seals successively opened by the Lamb, chapters 6 to 8 verse 1. The 7th chapter is a parenthetical one of deep interest. 6. The 7 trumpets successively sounded by the angels, chapters 8 verse 2 to 11 verse 18. Here, the revived Roman Empire is in the forefront in these judgment prophecies. 7. 3 sources, chapter 12, 2 actors, chapter 13, and 7 results, chapter 14, chapters 12 to 14. 8. The 7 vials of God's wrath successively poured out, chapters 15 and 16. The closing dealings of God upon the empire, Israel, and the earth. 9. Babylon the mystical, in her political and ecclesiastical associations and utter destruction. Chapters 17 and 18. 10. Chronological sequence from the fall of Babylon till the eternal state, opening with rejoicing in heaven and closing with a picture of eternal misery in the lake of fire. Chapters 19 to 21, verse 8. 11. The bride of the Lamb in governmental and millennial splendor. A thing of love, of life, and of beauty forever. Chapters 21, verse 9 to 22, verse 5. 12. Warnings, threatenings, and encouragements. Chapter 22, verses 6 to 21. Chronological order. Chapters 2 and 3 unfold the moral history of the Church in successive periods of her history, from the close of the first Christian century to its final rejection. Then chapters 4 and 5 are chronological insofar that heaven and not earth is the scene of action, the heavenly saints having been removed to their home above. The fact of the rapture is not mentioned in the Apocalypse, but assumed as having taken place in the time between chapters 3 and 4. Paul unfolds the rapture. John follows on, assuming it has occurred. We place, therefore, the rapture of the saints after the church ruin shown in chapter 3 and before the glory witnessed in chapter 4. The history on earth is then resumed from the close of chapter 3, but it is the history of the apostate world, Israel, the revived Roman Empire, and Christendom generally. This will be found in chapters 6, 8, 9, 11, verses 14 to 18, 15, verse 5, 16, verse 21, and 19, verses 11 to 21. Parenthetic portions. There are 6 distinctly marked parentheses in the book, which are as follows. 1. Chapter 7, between the 6th and 7th seals. 2. Chapter 10 and up to 11, verse 13, between the 6th and 7th trumpets. 3. Chapter 11, verse 19 through to chapter 15, verse 4, between the sounding of the 7th trumpet and the pouring out of the bowls of wrath. 4. Chapter 16, verses 13 to 16, between the 6th and 7th vials. 5. Chapter 17 to chapter 19, verse 10, between the pouring out of the 7th vial and the personal advent of the Lord in power and glory. 6. Chapter 21, verse 9 to 22, verse 5, between the description of the eternal state and the concluding section of the book. The longest parenthesis is the 3rd, in which the hidden sources of good and evil are disclosed, chapter 12, the agents and chief instruments of evil named, chapter 13, and the results in grace and judgment fully stated, chapter 14. General notes. The strictly prophetic part of the book commences with chapter 6 and concludes with verse 5 of chapter 22. The chronological events under the seals, trumpets, and vials transpire after the rapture and before the appearing in glory. It will be impossible to understand the revelation if this is not clearly seen. No date can be fixed for the opening of the seals. The Roman Empire may be forming while the seals are being opened one by one. The empire is not recognized as existing under the seals. It may be that under the throes of the sixth seal, chapter 6, verses 12 to 17, the empire emerges out of the general chaos, but we cannot pronounce with certainty. The first four trumpets, chapter 8, specially concern the Roman world. The three woe trumpets announce judgment respectively upon apostate Israel, apostate Christendom, and upon the guilty world. The trumpets succeed the seals, and the vials succeed the trumpets. The seal judgments are comparatively light but widespread, with but one exception. Chapter 6, verse 8. The trumpet chastisements are heavier in character. The first four are more limited in extent, while the last three are woe judgments. The martyred company of Judah on the glassy sea, harping and singing, are noted in chapters 14 verses 2 and 15 verses 2 to 4. The preserved company of Judah on Mount Zion alone can learn the song of their brethren above, chapter 14 verses 1 to 5. The sealed company of Israel, chapter 7, are not said to emerge out of the tribulation, and are a distinct company from that of chapter 14. The 144,000 of chapter 7 are of all Israel, whereas the 144,000 of chapter 14 are of Judah only. The apostate part of Israel is especially in view in chapter 9 verses 1 to 11. Thus all Israel is fully accounted for.